What defines a good Marvel movie? Is it the amount of action, the characters involved, or is it just simply having a good story? For the longest time, audiences have known the answer to this question. It being obviously a good story. That's what we're all looking for. The real question has been whether or not Disney knows this. But with the recent release of Thunderbolts, it's ever present that Disney not only knows what the audience wants, and will only deliver it when they feel like it. By all accounts, Thunderbolts should not work as a film. It only features characters who have been tossed aside by the writers and the fans alike. I mean, for God's sakes, 3 of them are just Captain America clones. And when this movie was first announced, everyone thought it was going to fail, myself included. When I first saw the trailer, I thought to myself, Marvel's trying to do a Suicide Squad. That's not going to end well. But let me tell you something. Right now, the film is sitting at over 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, making it the highest rated Marvel movie since No Way Home. And I can tell you from personal experience, it deserves all of the love it's getting. But how did a movie filled with B characters with little to no superpowers become an overnight classic? Simple. The story is absolutely immaculate. From the cinematography to the character development and the foreshadowing. I mean, this is the first MCU movie that has felt like an actual movie in a really long time. And what I mean by that is that this is really the first Marvel movie that's felt like it's had stakes since Endgame. And I mean real stakes. Even movies like Captain America: Brave New World don't feel as impactful as this film. And sure, you have Sam Wilson as Captain America with no super soldier serum going up against a Red Hulk, so that should feel impactful, that should feel dangerous, there should be some tension there, but there's not. And I think a big reason as to why is that Hulk has been treated like a joke the past couple of years in the MCU. And on top of that, you have characters in the movie joking about the situation. For example, whenever Ross finally does transform into the Red Hulk, you have a reporter saying, "Since when were they red?" cracking some weird little quip in the face of certain peril. This just makes the plot feel so inconsequential. Because if the characters in the movie aren't afraid, why should I be? And when Ross does Hulk out, not only do we have the reporter making a joke, he doesn't target any civilians. In fact, I don't think any civilians were harmed whatsoever. We don't see Hulk actively harm another person unless they're like military personnel or Sam Wilson, people who are actually meant to be handling the situation. There aren't any civilians getting in the way. And likewise, there are really no civilians that Sam needs to be aware of or save, giving them this huge playground to fight as hard as they can with no real consequences. Meanwhile, in Thunderbolts, when the team is actively going against the Void, civilians are constantly in the crossfire. A great example of this is a scene where Alexei saves a little girl, and she is immediately turned into a Void shadow right before his eyes. This small interaction helped raise the stakes immensely. Suddenly, it wasn't gods versus gods, it was gods against humans. I feel like this has definitely been a big problem in the MCU recently. A lot of projects just have gods pit against each other. They kind of forget that human aspect. People fail, people will lose. And I think it's important to see our heroes lose so they can rise up to the occasion. For example, going back to Captain America: Brave New World, there isn't really a point where Sam loses. I mean, sure, things don't go right, but there's not really a moment where he is bested by one of the villains he's trying to take down. It's literally the reason why Endgame felt so important. We had already seen what the Infinity Stones could do back in Infinity War, so when our heroes were trying to keep the gauntlet away from Thanos, we felt a lot of tension because we know what he could do with it. That's the difference between a grounded story and just gods bashing each other, like a kid playing with 2 action figures. When it comes to superhero films, you have to be able to find a balance between both. In my opinion, Avengers 1 is a perfect example of this. In that movie, you have godlike superheroes fighting an actual god with an alien army. This should not feel grounded or realistic at all, and yet it does. And that's because the filmmakers use clever emotions between not only the main characters, but the side characters, making sure that every action has a consequence and the heroes feel the repercussions of those actions. The Avengers were acting too egotistical to figure out Loki's real intentions, leading to the death of Phil Coulson. Their actions had a very real consequence that the audience had to suffer through with them. This showcase of emotion helps our brains think this is a more realistic scenario than it really is. Because out of aliens and superheroes and gods fighting amongst each other, one thing that our brains can really comprehend is loss. We can comprehend what loss feels like and what it's like to grieve. So whenever you include these elements in your story, not only does it make your characters seem more human, it gives the audience something to latch onto and relate with and really feel grounded in the story no matter where you are. That's why Guardians of the Galaxy is so amazing, because it takes such a human story and puts it into these vast, incredibly crazy space scenarios. It's the responsibility of filmmakers to guide the audience's emotions. We need to be told what to feel. If characters are overly confident or they don't take the situation seriously, we as the audience won't either. Now, it might sound like I'm saying jokes don't have a place in the MCU, but that would be redundant. I think jokes are fun. I think it adds a nice retort to the characters. It keeps the audience engaged. It makes it feel a little bit lighthearted. It's very fun. But you have to pick and choose your battles. A great example of this is Iron Man. Most of the movies he's in, he's cracking jokes, he's confident, but as soon as the situation calls for it or he loses, he immediately locks in on his emotions. He's quiet, reserved, sad. We see him suffer. We see his fear, his panic. It makes him significantly more human and relatable to the audience. As humans, we obviously experience a multitude of emotions. And in order for us to truly relate to somebody, whether it's through a screen or face to face, we have to see those emotions. And when you watch gods clash on the big screen, it can be easy to forget the importance of what's going on. Because at that point, it feels way too unrealistic. We have to see these characters in their low points. We have to see them fail and rise up again. Because at this point, with the amount of power that these characters have, this is literally the only thing that's keeping them grounded and keeping them relatable. And that's exactly why movies like Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Thunderbolts are doing so well. They feature gods trying to be human, rather than humans trying to be gods. These characters are desperately trying to get through their external struggles while dealing with their own internal battles. Battles that we can relate to. Battles that make them stronger than the punches they give on the big screen. Intense emotions like sadness are inevitable in our lifetime. They are uncomfortable. We don't know how to deal with them. Most of the time, we don't want to deal with them. We try and push that emotion down, shove it aside, tell ourselves that we're okay. We use jokes, metaphorical masks, and even work to hide from the fact that we are not doing okay. And that's exactly why if we see a character express their internal sadness on screen, it can speak to us in such a raw, visceral way if it's done right. Now, I'm not saying that every movie needs their character to be sad or go through some kind of traumatic event. But what I am saying is if you have a sad or traumatic event in your movie, your character needs to respond appropriately. Otherwise, it can take the audience out of the experience entirely. A really great example of this is from The Marvels. After sacrificing herself to close the rift, the very next scene is Carol and Kamala moving into her old childhood home, laughing and telling jokes. There isn't any grieving or mourning or anything. This creates such a stark disconnect from the audience and the characters. And you could argue they're not sad because, well, she didn't die. But they don't know that. They were literally talking about how it would be a suicide mission. But despite everything they went through in the film, Kamala and Carol don't seem to give two shits about Monica. Look, all of this is to say that Thunderbolts handles emotions extremely well. And I could talk about it for hours, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want this video to be an hour long. So if you haven't seen Thunderbolts, I highly recommend it. Definitely go to the theater and check it out before you can't. This movie not only has a heartfelt story, really high stakes, it's also one of the funniest MCU movies I've ever seen. And it's all thanks to the actors' chemistry on screen. I would even go as far as to argue that their chemistry rivals that of the Avengers. Genuinely. But anyways, that's all for me today. I wanted to give you guys a quick review about the movie, and if you want like a number review, I would give it a 10 out of 10. This movie, like I said, is amazing. I really wanted to, like, as I was watching it, I was like, oh my god, I can make a video about this, talking about the emotions, because this is a very emotional movie, and I feel like we haven't gotten that from Marvel in a really long time. If you're new here, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below if you have seen it, if you liked it, if you thought it was as good as I think it was. I always like having a conversation in the comments. I try and read and respond to all of them. But yeah, I think that's all from me. I'll see you guys in the next one.